recording. All right. So, my fantastic sixth graders, we are going to go over Module 3. Okay? Everybody should have their pen, paper, notes, and the lesson pulled up. This should last about a half an hour. I know that you have a math lesson probably today too, so I will not go past 11:30 to give you guys time to get to your math lesson, okay? All right, let me adjust. So, let's take a look at this. Have your narrative. You should have your graphic organizer out. Well, we're going to talk about that last week before Thanksgiving. Nope, actually 7th graders is at noon. Check your email. 6th graders are 11. Oh, really, Melissa? I thought sometimes you had it on Monday. That's okay. So, all right, Ashley, I'll see you then, sweetie. Last week, that 2-day week, and maybe you weren't able to turn that in, but for your 2-day week, you had 2 assignments due. You had 3.01 and 3.03. 3.03 was your graphic organizer from the narrative. You'll want to read the story prompt, and now you will become the author and write a narrative based on the prompt. Start your stories with characters walking home and discovering the time capsule. Grace, if I'm cutting in and out, I'll turn up my volume. Hopefully that will help. You might want to log out and log back in. Okay, I'm sorry. Grace, are you on your Chromebook? Make sure that you're accessing this from your Chromebook, okay, guys? Yes, okay. Thanks, Melissa. I think it is a very fun assignment. Okay, so for 3.03, use the graphic organizer on the pace chart and make a copy of it. So if you have not done 3.03, and there's a couple of you who didn't, please make sure that you do this. There's a lot of work due for language arts this week, so it's really important that you guys get 3.03 done. Use the graphic organizer on the pace chart, okay? Questions on 3.03 from last week? So any questions on 3.03 from last week? I'm going to write this in here too because I think we're having... Okay, that's fine. Make sure that you turn it in though, guys, okay? All right, so everybody's good with, give me a thumbs up if you're good with 3.03 from last week, your graphic organizer for your narrative. Thumbs up if you're good with 3.03, and if you have not turned it in, you're going to turn it in today. And as always, if you have any questions, you can always hang out at the end, and I'd be more than happy to help you. Okay, so who can tell me, just briefly, what was the story prompt? So you're given a story prompt. You're writing your own narrative, your own creative story. What was the prompt? Just briefly, write down, tell me what the prompt was. I think it's a fun one. Grace, hopefully you can hear better now, honey. So what were you supposed to write about? Oh, there was a secret meeting. Good, Christiana. And a cylinder. Yes, there was a cylinder. Good, Grace. And dun 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 dun. You had characters who were called, yeah, they had that stuff in it, and they called the characters kids. I guess that's what they called teen because it's set. Where's the setting? It is your choice. Where is the setting of this? In the future. Good, Gabby. New York in the future. Okay. Kids are walking home. They discover a time capsule after a secret meeting. And from there, your only limit is your imagination. So when you do this narrative, they're just giving you that story point of New York City in the future, kids walking home from a secret meeting, and they come across a time capsule that gives them hope, okay? After that, it is completely up to you where you go with that story. But your 3.03 should have your organizer for that story, okay? And I like your enthusiasm, guys. Hey, Ishmael, you'll have to go back and listen to it again, okay? So now let's move on to do this week. So when you look at your pace chart for this week, you might be like, oh my goodness, there's so much that has to be done. And that's why I wanted you guys to meet with me for the live lesson today, because it is not as overwhelming as what it appears. Okay? If you need help or clarification, remember to call, text, or email me. We're going to break this down piece by piece. Okay? So when we do the lesson, we need to use a storyline of the news article. Yes, that is your starting point, David. You need to use the story prompt as your starting point. Okay? So what is due this week is 3.04. That's your narrative introduction paragraph. We're going to review this, so this is kind of just an idea of what we're going to happen this week. So 3.04 is going to be begin your narrative. 3.05 is about dialogue in a story. I want you to read the lesson, but you don't have to take the quiz. Okay? 3.06 is about transitions. I want you to read the lesson, but you don't have to take the quiz. Okay? 3.07 is the middle of the story. Okay? And 3.08 is the end of the narrative. So for 3.07, that's exempt, but you're turning in the middle and the ending for your story in 3.08. Okay? So for 3.08, you're turning in both the middle and the end of the narrative. So 3.04 is your beginning. 3.08, you're turning in the middle and the end of the narrative. So you're writing the whole story this week. So what I want you to know is when you walk away from this today, you are writing the whole story, the whole narrative this week. I exempted the quizzes so you could focus on the story. So give me a smiley face if you understand that this week you are writing your entire narrative and you're exempted from quizzes 3.05, 3.06, and 3.07. All right. Good. Now we're going to go over this piece by piece, but I just wanted to give you guys a general overview of where we are at this week. It is a busy week for language arts, okay, but you can handle it because you're tough. Big sixth graders. Gabby, if you can't see or hear anything, log out. Log out. Hold on, let me write a, okay, I'm glad it's back, Gabby. Okay, so my big ferocious sixth graders, let's break this down. 3.04, and this is where you can pull up your lesson and look at it. Again, I want you to read the entire lesson and take notes. This is a very brief overview for clarification. Okay? So in 3.04, you're beginning your narrative. You want to write an awesome introduction. It must have the who, when, and where of the story. In other words, it includes the protagonist and the setting. So you already, in the story starter, you know that your setting is New York City. So you need to mention that it's New York City in the future. Okay? It's given you a little bit of the setting, just a little bit, and then you expand on the rest of it. Okay? Gabby, you can take screenshots. Go ahead, sweetheart, but I will have the recording available for you guys tomorrow on the pace chart, okay? So if you want to take screenshots, but I will have the recording available, and I'll make the PDF available on the pace chart too, okay? So 3.04. It's okay, Maya. We're going over this week, so just we're starting with 3.04, right? So begin your narrative, 3.04. So let's talk about this. This is kind of the summary of what's going on in 3.04. You want to introduce your narrative. You want to describe your setting. Your protagonist is introduced. Remind me, you guys, what's a protagonist? So in your chat box, tell me what a protagonist is. I'm giving everyone time. Yes, the good guy, the main character, the main person the story is about, usually the good character, okay? So in your introduction paragraph, you want to make sure you describe the setting, introduce your protagonist, You want to make your reader care about the protagonist. I want to be rooting for this protagonist. I care about what happens to this protagonist. So in your story, you need to make me care. You can add dialogue, you can add whatever you want, but you need to make me care about the protagonist in it. Okay? And with your setting, just don't say it was in New York City in the future. Okay? What you want to do is you want to make me, as the reader, feel like I'm in the story. So tell me about the setting. Use your 5 senses. Okay? Describe the feelings of your protagonist. Are they afraid? Are they happy? Are they scared? Okay? You can also write about a quirky personality trait. Okay? Maybe your character has a limp. Maybe they talk backwards. Maybe they like Mad Hatter, okay? Maybe they ask questions. Maybe everything they do is a question. But what quirky or unusual character trait? Harry Potter has glasses. Okay, so we always know with Harry Potter, the symbol is the glasses or the lightning bolt scar. Those are quirky personality traits on a physical level. Okay, so a quirky personality trait. Now, you don't have to do all of this, but pick some of it. You want to make sure you're describing the setting and making the reader care about the protagonist. Questions. That's a lot of information, guys. What questions? Okay, again, this is a brief introduction to what you need to do. You are responsible to go through and read the lesson. Give me a thumbs up if you have a good idea about what you should write for your narrative introduction paragraph. Give me a thumbs up if you understand what you should write for your introduction narrative. Yes, the bad guy is yes. Melissa, it's a short story. So is it paragraphs like in an essay? No. If you want to go over one paragraph for the introduction, that's completely fine. It needs to be at least 75 words, I believe. But no, it's a narrative. It's a short story. So this is not a 5-paragraph essay. This is a narrative short story. Okay. Yay, it'll be fun. Okay, the next thing. So this is the assignment. All I did here, guys, is I took it right from the lesson, just so you understand. You want to use the ideas from your narrative organizational chart from 3.03. You already did the hard part. You did the planning. You write an introduction of 75 words. It can be one paragraph, can be a couple paragraphs, whatever works for you. You want to review the news article and prompt on which your narrative organizational chart was based. Okay. You want to write your introduction in third-person point of view. If somebody else was asking me, just to make sure that you're clear, third-person point of view, right? Use pronouns he, she, and they in your writing. This is not in you. You are not telling the story. You are writing this as like, once upon a time, there was this girl. She discovered a time capsule. Okay. So it's third person. You want to introduce your setting with vivid descriptions, and you can use one of the following techniques for introducing your protagonist. You want to be the feelings of your protagonist or your protagonist's quirky personality trait. Okay. Whew, that's a lot, guys. What can I make clearer for you? What can I help you with? David, you can have more than 75, okay? Don't give me like 400 though. All right. Yes, Melissa. You can submit it for 3.08, but submit it for 3.04 too. Yes, correct. Yes, please have an antagonist. Good, Gabby. Yay, Gabby. Clap for Gabby. You should have a conflict, and it can be the antagonist can be the conflict. Rising action. Thanks, Melissa, playing along. Okay, so that's 3.04. That's your assignment for 3.04. You're writing your introduction to your narrative. So 3.05, that should read. The dialogue is exempt. Christiana, okay, you guys read this. Christiana, go ahead and put your question in. Yeah, Grace, you can have the cylinder as the antagonist, but you also have something in the way of the conflict. Yeah, I know. Sorry. Okay, Christiana, put your question in, sweetheart. You will be writing a narrative about the story. The story of the in the future with kids coming back, finding a cylinder after a secret meeting. That's your story starter. You're writing the rest of the story. Okay. No, that's good. I'm glad that you're asking questions. So dialogue. When you write dialogue, and again, you guys, you need to make sure that you're reading this lesson even though you don't need to take the quiz on it. The key things that I want you to remember for effective dialogue is that it enhances the story and develops the characters. Don't put in dialogue for no reason. Dialogue should move the plot of the story forward. You don't want them to just talk about the weather unless there's going to be a storm and they're going to get hurt. Okay? So don't throw in things that aren't relevant. Dialogue should move the story forward and develop the characters. If you want the character to discuss the secret meeting and that tells us more about the character, whether they're brave or scared or what their personality is like, that's good. Okay? A new speaker equals a new paragraph. This is something that can be new to some of you, and I have an example on the next one. Anytime a new speaker, a new character talks, you have a new paragraph. Okay? Quotation marks surround the speaker's exact words and punctuation. Spoken words are capitalized and punctuated as normal. So you guys, I think, know how to do, like Sylvia said, I had a dream, it wasn't good. You know how to write your dialogue. Where I find that you guys get stuck is that a new speaker equals a new paragraph. So here's an example. Tia's eyes were wide as she exclaimed, "Wow, I can't wait for the sequel." And then you do the space, do your return, and you should indent. Shonda shrugged. The kid next to me was texting the whole time. "Oh, we're changing speakers again." Sylvia looked at him with sympathy. "That's annoying. Why didn't you ask her to stop?" So look, every time a new speaker talks, you start a new paragraph. So Tia, Chandra, and Sylvie. Okay. And if you get stuck, guys, go back to the lesson or just take a look at a novel or a book. Yes, Maya. No, that's okay. If you get stuck with this, guys, pull up a short story, look at a novel. You'll see that every time a new person speaks, you start a new paragraph. Okay. Thumbs up if you're comfortable with that. I will be looking for this in your stories. So in your narrative, I will be looking and checking that you're doing it the right way. Yes, it's still third person because you're saying Tia's eyes. Tia's the one talking. But you're not saying, "I feel this way." Your characters can talk in first person. Correct. Okay, good. Read through it. Now 3.06 is exempt, but let's review that too. So 3.06 talks about words and phrases that signal shifts in time and place. Right? It's a transition, but it's not a transition like in an essay. It's transitions that signal time and space. Right? Transitions that indicate time can be described as an event that already has happened, two events happening at the same time, or an event that happened after another. They can indicate place, and they can appear at the beginning, middle, or end of the sentence. Right? So when you're talking about transitions in a narrative, you're talking about shifts in time and place, and you can put those at the beginning, middle, or end of the sentence. Yes, Grace, you do. And this chart can be a little confusing, so I want to give you an example of why it matters, why transitions of time and place are important in your story. Right? In the story, it says, "We were so happy 2 days later when we found her hiding in the neighbor's garage." They were talking about a cat in this. Okay? So your transitions are 2 days later and hiding in the neighbor's garage. It tells time and place. It would be very different if they just said, we were so happy when we found her. Well, were they happy that they found her 5 minutes later? Were they happy they found her 2 days later? And where did they find her? So these are the details that are important in your narrative. Okay? And you can see from this transition, the reader thinks, oh, she must have gotten scared. She was hiding again. The transitions add a lot to the story and make it more clear. You naturally put time and place in your stories, in your narrative, but just a reminder that you want to make sure as you're writing your narrative, you are including time and place, especially with your narrative since it's in the future. Okay? Smiley face if you understand that. Again, you need to go through and read it, but just make sure you're adding time and place. Smiley face if you get that. If you don't get that, write a question. Let me help you. Go back and read the lesson, but know that you just need to add details like time and place. Okay? It's okay, David. Do you have a question, David? Or did you hit the wrong emoticon? Okay. No, this is a DVA. This is not a DVA. This is a live lesson. If you have to go, make sure that you are watching the recorded live lesson tomorrow. So 3.07. So remember, I told you guys that you're writing the beginning, the middle, and the end of your story. So for 3.07, I want you to read through 3.07. It tells you what you should put in the middle of your narrative. Okay? But you're not going to turn it in for 3.07. You're going to turn the middle and the end in for 3.08. All right. So for 3.08, you're writing the middle and the end of the story, but you still need to put the important things in the middle. So this is what should go in the middle of your narrative. And this is a review, guys. We've gone over this before, but you're writing this on your own now. So you've done your introduction. Your middle of your narrative should be your body. You need to have the rising action. What introduces and increases action? What's going on with the time capsule, with the secret meeting? Right? The climax. The protagonist makes decisions or takes action to solve the problem. The climax, that's your high point of action at the end of the story. It's usually the part in the movie or the book where you're on the edge of your seat and you're not sure what's going to happen. It's got the big chase scene or the big mystery solved. That's your climax. So for your body of the narrative, you have to have your rising action and your climax. And in order to do that, you need to make the reader feel like they're part of the story with sensory descriptions and dialogue. So those sensory descriptions are your who, what, when, and why. Oh, I'm sorry. Your sensory descriptions are your 5 senses, okay? Taste, touch, feel, see, smell. Those should be in there. So have your sensory description and then dialogue to move the story forward. What do you think? Thumbs up if you get that. In the body of your narrative, you need your rising action, your climax. Thumbs down if you don't get it. Or say and I'll help you. Awesome. Okay. So for 3.08, that's your big finish or your conclusion. And again, I want you to go through. There's a lot of reading this week. Make sure you read these lessons. So the end of your narrative, you have the falling action. What happens right after the climax? After we find out who the bad guy is and the mystery is solved or the big fight scene, what happens after? The resolution is the last few lines of the story. Okay? And the theme, this is really important. What did the protagonist learn? What did the reader learn? Right? The big thing on this is how did your character change? So as a result of your story, how did your character change and grow? What did the protagonist learn? Right? So make sure that you have something in the end of your narrative that shows what the protagonist learned. the theme. Okay, so in 3.08, you're going to turn in the middle and ending to your narrative. So for the middle, this is what you'll need for 3.8. You need to include your introduction. So in 3.8, you're turning in your introduction, your middle, and your end. Okay? You want to make sure that you have the middle of your narrative, rising action and climax. This is for your middle. You have to have at least 2 sensory descriptions, dialogue, 2 events of rising action, the climax event. And the middle needs to be 300 words or more. And you have to write in third person. And this is exactly the directions that are on 3.07. Okay? It's your middle. And then for your end, you need the conclusion, which should be 50 words or more. You want to have the events that occur right after the climax. You want to write a resolution with a theme. I'm crossing that out. Okay? And you want to write in third person point of view. So, and I know I have a couple of 7th graders who are joining me a little early. 7th graders, you're welcome to hang out. I'm just going over the 6th grade lesson, okay? And 7th graders will start right at noon. Okay, so for 3.08, you're including your introduction, your body, and your conclusion, and I will grade you on your body and conclusion. Questions? All right, just to preview for my 6th graders, 3.09 Module 3 Review and DBA will be next Monday at 11. So you have a big week for language arts. You have your narrative story to write, introduction, body, and conclusion. Get that all done. A lot of the quizzes are exempted. And then Monday, we'll have a DBA. All right, guys, questions? Yes, intro can have dialogue, but make sure you're introducing the character. If you do not have any questions, my awesome 6th graders, you're fantastic. I will have the recording available tomorrow on your pace chart. Call me or text me if you need anything, because this is a